What's up, guys? Welcome back to Rakxm Reviews Free Comic Book Day 2018. Last time we did 20-ish stories, not necessarily comics, but 20-ish stories. Today we're just going to push on through another 20-ish, probably about 15, 16 issues that have 20-ish stories amongst them. So let's just kick off with The Tick, because The Tick is always fun. The first story in this is called The Prophecy of Peril. It's basically just a huge joke making fun of the Prince Valiant stuff. It's really cool seeing the Tick in like a barbarian-esque style. Like you get to see him on a friggin' horse in like a kilt and everything. And it's great because he's going out and fighting these goblins and trying to save this kingdom. And at the end of it all, you find out that he's actually at an amusement park. And the workers are just irritated with him because he's been there for a while and they wanted to move on. So yeah, there's that. The next one is called 30 Minutes or Less. It's literally the Tick stopping a guy from robbing a pizza delivery guy and then taking the pizza to help make sure it gets delivered in the 30 minutes or less guarantee that is given by the pizza shop. And I mean, the style that it was done in wasn't really my thing. It was a little bit hard to look at, if we're being honest, as you can see from that. But as a whole, like, it was actually a pretty enjoyable story. And then the last one is called May the Best Man Win. It's about, God, I don't even know, like a duck-looking guy, a duck-looking superhero, rubber duck maybe. It's at his wedding, and he has chosen the Tick to be his best man. And we come to find out that the whole reason he picked the Tick to be his best man is because he was worried about the villains that were going to show up and try to stop the wedding. And he ends up winning, as we expected. And then, yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. So he fights some people, and then Rubber Ducky and his fiance get married. The end. Pretty cool Tick story. I mean, the artwork was good, and it was cool to see some of the other heroes that he usually doesn't team up with besides Arthur. So, yeah, there's that. The next one is one that caught me off guard with how good it was. Maxwell's Demons. At first, I thought it was just like a Calvin and Hobbes type thing, fun, fantasy-filled adventure. Maxwell's Demons are literally manifestations of his imagination that are out to kill him and everything he holds dear, including his army of stuffed animals. He meets a group of what he thinks to be superheroes that turn out to be the villains of the series, and he ends up using this manifestation, which is a giant space worm that he believes has been chasing him all across different realities that he's visited. This is the giant worm. And he ends up realizing that this is the manifestation of his strength. And the strength he then uses to kill these superheroes that he thought he was looking up to. Because they're the real villains. And we actually see the real world side of it too. He has a father who is negligent, and he doesn't feel like he can connect to his father in any way. And in the epilogue, we actually see that the father feels the exact same way about his son. So it's kind of a sad take on the whole negligent father aspect of the story, because his father feels guilty about the fact that his son is smarter than him and he can't relate to him on any field. And so rather than try and relate to him, he's kind of just an abusive asshole. So Maxwell's Demons has already come out with their first volume. It's been out for a while. And this was cool because it actually let me read into what the story is. So I think it's a great read. I think y'all should check it out. But don't take my word for it. Next up, we have one called Silver. The interior is actually done in a noir style. As you can see, it's very much Frank Miller. I get a very Frank Miller vibe from it. Like, even these characters look like they could be out of Sin City. It's a heist, basically. This issue is about a heist that kind of goes wrong, and it kind of builds off of the whole mythology of Dracula. Not necessarily with vampires and such, but with the history of who Dracula was as a person. And it ends with this thief getting stuck underground in some catacombs where he finds more than he bargained for in his heist. Now, the cover implies that the rest of the story does involve vampires, which I would love to read that. But I don't know. Beyond this issue, I don't know what goes on in the comic Silver. All right, so everyone loved the series Invader Zim when it was on TV. Unfortunately, it was a very short-lived series. It didn't go past, I believe it was like the first season, maybe. But it was revived recently in a comic book form. This is actually a reprint of a series, or of an issue that came out months ago. I don't remember what issue it was. It actually doesn't even say in this issue. But just from reading this alone, I am sold, and I want to actually watch that TV series. I never got to growing up, and I really want to get into the comics as well. This issue focuses on Zim has built a doomsday monster, and he's decided to release it onto the city, and he wants to go watch. But on his way out the front door, he sees Gurr sitting on the couch watching a moronic TV show. Literally, the characters on the cover here um, are the characters in this TV show, and it's called, what is it called? Floopsy Bloops Schmoopsy. I guess that translates to Floopsy Loves Schmoopsy, but, you know, all it is these two dumb-looking animals blooping each other, whatever the hell that means. It implies a lot, but Zim is disgusted with Gurr for watching this show, and yet he sits down and watches it. Not just an episode, not just a few episodes. He sits down and binge watches. Oh, how many episodes is it? A lot. He sits down and binge watches. Oh, for a year, and then a week, and then 6 months, and then 6 more months, and then more time, and then more time. The whole time he's out there binge watching, or he's in the house with Gurr binge watching this TV show, his doomsday monster has gone out, destroyed the world, become a benevolent dictator, realized the error of his ways, rebuilt civilization for the humans, and left the earth to go and help other civilizations. And Zim comes out and realizes that his monster's not there, and he wants to know what happened, why he ran away so fast. Not realizing that he has watched over 500 episodes of this TV show that he did not want to watch in the first place. And I feel like we've all been there. We've all sat down and watched a stupid TV show that we really regret watching. So I kind of feel for Zim on that one. Next up, we have Berlin. It's literally a story that takes place during World War II in Berlin. It's not my thing. I'm not a huge fan of historical fiction. I mean, there's some historical fiction that I enjoy, but this is very much. I believe this is supposed to be a piece of historical, maybe not even fiction, just a graphic novelization of something that happened actually during the build-up to World War II. Yeah, the interior artwork is actually very simple. There's not a whole lot of detail going into the characters' faces or anything. Like I said, it's not really my cup of tea, but I can say that it is still pretty well done. It's done by Drawn and Quarterly. I don't actually know what else they've done. I know the name, but I don't know much beyond that. And I can confirm, actually, that it does say on the cover, it's a piece of historical fiction. So, yeah, I guess I was right in the first place. Next up is the Aspen, or the World of Aspen 2018. For those of you who don't read Aspen, they're kind of like Zenoscope, which is very over the top with their characters. Zenoscope tends to be more woman-heavy stories, like Little Red Riding Hood, The Wizard of Oz, things like that. Aspen finds a very happy medium with that. The first one is called Dissension, War Eternal, and basically what that is the look of it is it's a groups of primitive races that actually come across aliens in their journeys across, the frozen wastelands. And of course, being primitive, they assume that they're demons and have to kill the demons. Then that doesn't work out for them. The next story is called New Way, which is about fighters. They're fighters in an elite group of fighters. I guess I keep saying the word fighters. It's kind of like Street Fighter, but if all the Street Fighters had cybernetic implants put into them, if the story focuses on a character who I cannot think of the name, I think his name's Ling, maybe. Um, but Ling starts off as a flesh and blood kind of fighter and ends up getting the crap kicked out of him. And so they give him a chance, give him some cybernetic implants, and he gets back into the fray. And it's about as far as I've gotten. So, like, that's as far as it goes. But I'm excited to see how it goes with this New Way. Next up is James Bond 007 Varger. I don't know shit about James Bond. I think the only James Bond movie I've ever watched was one of the Sean Connery ones with the voodoo stuff going on. I don't even know what it was called. I just know that's what it was. This story didn't really give a whole lot of exposition to who James Bond is as a character, and to me that kind of bothered me, but I'm not going to make a huge fuss about it. The artwork is pretty good. It's done by Dynamite, who never really fails to amaze with their artwork styles. But it was really, it just felt like a very simple, run-of-the-mill spy espionage story. So it's not really my cup of tea. I mean, making fun of the British with the cup of tea thing, but you know how it is. Next up is a story called Crush, which is apparently the follow-up, or a maybe a follow-up. I don't know. It's a story about a young man named Jorge Ruiz. He's actually this big lunk of a guy right here, in middle school, and he is a kid that's pretty big, not necessarily fat, but he's a larger fella that nobody really messes with. And as the days go by, he realizes he's developing a crush on this girl, and it's just kind of him being awkward, trying to acknowledge this, and his friends trying to be supportive of him as he goes on this journey, which, it is what it is. Like, I haven't gotten too far. Like, I'm curious as to how this story goes. The writer, oh, fudge, Svetlana Shmakova, Svetlana Shmakova? I don't know. Maybe, probably pronounced that way. She's also the creator of a story called Awkward and Brave. I don't know if it has anything to do with this. Just based on the letter stylization between Crush and Awkward and Brave, I'm guessing it's probably part of the same story. But it's definitely a really interesting story, and I recommend it. At the back of that, we have a short story for a series called Witch. It came out a while ago. Like, it was like one of those 2006 era stories, this era type stuff. And it's actually really well done. It does give a lot of exposition for the character that is involved in the story. As far as who any of these characters are, couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you anything beyond the fact that it introduces a character that goes to a school for witches, I'm guessing. I mean, it's in the name. Pretty obvious. Next up is a story called The Meta Baron. Now, The Meta Baron is a follow-up to a series called Meta Barons, plural. I've actually held the entire collection, all 17 or so issues of the Meta Barons, but I never read it. I never knew what it was about. It never really piqued my interest. Then I read this. This is actually the third book of Meta Baron. So I'm guessing that the first two are the Meta Barons stories. But basically, you're introduced to a character that has crash landed in a reality that's not his own, and he's just trying to find his way back. But he is stranded. He has lost one of his arms, which was a cybernetic implant, and the only thing that he has left of his old life on his old home world is this amulet around his neck, which actually contains the soul of, I believe, one of his former shipmates, or maybe his ship itself. And it turns out that the only way for him to get home is to get in good with the high priestess of this other tribe, on this planet he's never been to, and by getting good with her, I mean they gonna have sex. So I'm interested in how the rest of this Meta Barons story goes. So it looks like there were 4 volumes of the Meta Barons, and now the Meta Baron has 4 volumes by himself, as well as a couple of auxiliary stuff. So I mean, it's something that definitely has a lot of history to it, and I'm excited to delve more into that history. So moving on, we have SpongeBob Freestyle Funnies 2018. I get it. It's SpongeBob. It's gonna be ridiculous. But this comic was a little bit over the top. In a good way for some, in a bad way for other parts. The first one is actually a supervillain team up, which is literally taking letters from the Marvel Comics supervillain team ups and parodying it. What you have is Plankton is trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula. I know, it's a shocker to me too. But he almost succeeds and decides that the best way to get what he needs from the Krusty Krab is to go out and hire another villain. So he recruits SpongeBob, of course, to help meet other supervillains. Because SpongeBob, for some reason, is friends with all of the supervillains. He's friends with all of them because they're retired and they're trying to just live a good life. So SpongeBob first brings him the Dirty Bubble. And the Dirty Bubble insists on doing, helping out in his own way. I'm sorry. He first brings in Man Ray, and Man Ray invents a glove. That's not a very subtle pun or a subtle parody of a certain other glove. In fact, you can see it right here in gold. It's not subtle at all that it's probably supposed to be the Infinity Gauntlet. Anyway, so SpongeBob brings Man Ray, and then he brings the Dirty Bubble, and then he brings the Atomic Flounder, Jumbo Shrimp, Sinister Slug, oh dear, and so many others. Before you know it, this easy plan to steal the Krabby Patty formula, which should have taken maybe 7 steps, now has 172 steps just to get to the Krabby Patty formula. And that's because there are an assload of villains that are now involved. In the end, Plankton fails because Mr. Crab teams up with Mermaid Man because Mermaid Man needs money. Mr. Krabs is willing to pay him, and they stop him. So the next story is called Patrick versus Somebody. I hated it. I hated this story. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to why it was here. No offense to Vanessa Davis, this art was off-putting. But yeah, it starts off with them reading comic books, and eventually Patrick ends up just drawing stuff all over his body. The last story in this is the Flotsam and Jetsam Ocean Fact. It's Flotsam and Jetsam, an eel-looking creature, or a goby and a shrimp, and you just learn some fun facts about gobies and shrimps. No big deal, nothing really major. It's just very short, but it's very to the point. And then the last thing in this one was one that just didn't at all feel necessary. Again, it was just done in a really awkward art style. It's called SpongeBob Battle Royale, and I hated it. I'm sorry, I hated it. He starts off with a sandwich fighting the beach, then ice cream fighting a comic book, then hammer fighting nails, and the nails win. And then, yeah. So I hated that particular 1-page comic, but to each their own, right? To each their own. Next up, we have 2000 AD. For those of you that don't know, 2000 AD is the comic that introduced Judge Dredd, as well as a few other characters. Well, in this comic, it doesn't focus on Judge Dredd. It focuses on Cadet Dredd. Cadet Dredd is Judge Dredd in training back when he's a cute little white-wearing cadet. And he is this strapping young lad right here. He is acting as security for I don't even know what kind of sport this is, Aeroball World Champion final in the year 2073. And he's basically just being crowd control. The teams are the Hellcats and the Raptors, and the Raptors happen to have two raptors as their mascots. And during the bout, one of the mascots for the Hellcats ends up getting a little rowdy and breaking open the cage to the Raptors. And Cadet Dread, rather than panicking and running like a sane person would in the face of two velociraptors, right hooks a velociraptor in the face. Straight up. Punches a velociraptor in the fucking face. Pardon my French. But come on. That's badass. And then the other raptor sees it and he's like, oh, I'm not messing with that. And goes back in the cage. They both go back into the cage. And Cadet Dread ends up arresting everybody in the crowd because everyone was kind of going nuts. So that was pretty cool. The next story in this issue is called Strontium Dog Trial Run. It's about a kid that has to team up with a robot to be tested to become a cop-type character. He's got the mutant powers of alpha wave vision, which allows him to see through solid objects, and he's trying to become a secret agent. So part of his mission is he has to take down a villain with causing little to no collateral damage. And in order to beat him, he bends the rules a little bit and ends up passing, becoming a secret agent. It's a really cool artwork style. It's a fun read, but it's just kind of it felt a little rushed. All in all, it was pretty good. And then the last I forgot, there's another one. There is a story called Humancraft. It's literally taking the creepers out of Minecraft, turning them into humans, and making the joke that they are playing as us. And there's one that starts out, he is doing math homework, and then one of his friends is doing pointless paperwork, and they're loving it. It's great. And then there's a guy, that gets to the next level because he cleans up dog poop, and somebody loses a promotion, this, that, and the other. And then we get to the third player, who is amazingly winning at everything. He has been, he bought some land because he started off the game with a lot of money, somehow. Then he sold the land for a lot more money. Then he ran a TV game show and kept hitting the lie button on the game and became president of the United States. It's definitely a parody of the way that certain presidents became president, and they can't figure out why he keeps just doing so good, despite the fact that he should not be doing as good as he is. So they hit the reset button, and that has President Trump hit a nuke button, ending the game for them, and they move on and go blow up houses instead of playing games now. And then the last story in this is called DR and Quinch Hijack Free Comic Book Day. DR and Quinch are drawn in a very uncomfortable style. This whole comic is about, I honestly don't know which one is which. The green guy decides that he needs to be in free comic books, and he figures the best way to do that is to travel back in time to when comic books are first started. And when that doesn't work, he travels back in time to when paneling was first done by artists back in the Renaissance. And then they go back even further to when writing's first written, and then even further back to the beginning of time. And the entire time he's traveling back in time, we see pieces of his buddy, the big purple thing, all over the place, because he managed to get famous while the green guy was not. So the purple guy basically ended up becoming a god because they left a giant balloon of him in the past, and the green guy just gives up on life and has himself get erased from reality. So that's that. So we covered about 20-ish stories, as I said we would. I'm going to wrap it up there, but I will finish some more soon, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe button. You know how every YouTuber says to do. But if you want to check out some of my other videos, feel free. There's new videos almost every day. And I'll see you guys next time with more of Rakxm Reviews.